Today you will be taking notes on denotations and connotations. Please print out the denotation and connotation notes and follow along with a pen or pencil and a highlighter. Anything you see in red should be highlighted in your notes. Let's get started. First, we'll write down your learning target. The learning target today is I will be able to determine the denotative and connotative meanings of a word and understand how word choice impacts the meaning and tone of a text. The first definition is denotation, a literal definition of a word. This would be something you would find in a dictionary or if you Google the definition of a word. The next definition is connotation, positive and negative associations that most words naturally carry with them. So an example would be greasy. So with the word greasy, you can look up the denotation, which is covered with or resembling an oily substance. So some things like car engines, they need to be greasy. But oftentimes the word greasy carries a negative connotation and has a negative association. So sometimes if you're talking about food being greasy or your hair being greasy, sometimes it has a negative connotation, which is different than the denotation of the word. Here's the engine that's greasy. That doesn't really carry a connotation. There are many words that denote the same thing, but their connotations are very different. And this would be an example of the hair being greasy, which holds the negative connotation. Or the food being too greasy, which might not be the same connotation for some of you guys.
Have you ever heard the same word used in different ways? The English language can be tricky like that. Here's an example. The dog lapped water out of his bowl, getting slobber all over Tiffany's shoes. Here, lapped means Tiffany's dog drank using his tongue. No wonder he made a mess. But what if we said, Bobby wanted to throw his controller across the room after his friend lapped him in Mario Kart? Here, lapped means Bobby's friend is an entire track length ahead of him. Ouch. These are two examples of denotation, a word's exact meaning. Words can also have different meanings depending on how they're used in context. This is called connotation. It refers to a word's intended meaning. Here's an example. Angelica's performance at the recital was just lovely. Here, lovely is used in a positive way. Angelica's performance was good. But if we say, the cat knocked over the flower vase, just lovely. Now, lovely is used in a negative way. A broken vase is not good. See the difference? Even though it's the same definition of the word, the different context provides opposite meanings. Here's an easy way to remember. Denotation, like definition. Connotation, like context. As a writer, you get to choose the word that will tell the reader exactly what you mean.
Now let's try some of this on your own. I want you to choose one of the words, define it, and then explain some of the different connotations associated with the word. Here are your words: girl, baby, cheap, and sick. So pick a word, define it, and then list some of the connotations with the word. So also in this application section, I want you guys to look at the word pairings and determine if each word has a positive or a negative connotation and place it in the appropriate box. So you have inexpensive and cheap, immature and youthful, chilly and refreshing, natural, plain, snob, cultured, skinny, and slender. So just take one word and place it in the box that you think is the correct connotation. So back to the front, we have the definition, or what I want you to write down for word meanings. Language meaning is continually shifting, is always contextual, and is infused by historical, cultural, and economic factors. And here are some examples. The word awful. We think of the word awful having a purely negative connotation, and it means something that is unpleasant. Like this. But did you know that in the 1300s, awful meant inspiring wonder and was a short version of full of awe? So the connotation has shifted with our language. Here's another example, bully. Again today, the word has a negative connotation. You don't ever want to be considered a bully. But in the 17th century, that's when the meaning changed. But before that, it was used to refer to someone as a darling or a sweetheart. So it was actually a term of endearment. The word cute. Today this has a positive connotation. Like this puppy is cute. And in the 1830s, that's when it started meaning this as pretty, charming, and dainty. But before that, cute meant, or was a shortened word for the meaning acute, which is keenly perceptive and shrewd, which isn't necessarily a negative connotation, but it does show that the meaning of the word has shifted throughout the centuries. Go to the application section. We are going to watch a video clip, and I want you to find an example where the denotation of a word is used different than the connotation that is evoked.
Why don't I know you? I'm new. I just moved here from Africa. What? I used to be homeschooled.
Wait, what?
My mom taught me at home.
No, I know what homeschool is. I'm not retarded. So you've actually never been to a real school before? Shut up. Shut up!
I didn't say anything.
Homeschooled. That's really interesting.
Thanks.
So hopefully you wrote down a couple words that are used differently than their denotation. Some examples could be what, or shut up, or interesting. Okay, let's flip back to the front of your notes and write down next to a tone of a text that writers often deliberately select words that they think will influence your reactions and appeal to your emotions. These word choices impact the meaning and tone of a text. We're going to examine how the tone of a text changes when we use different words or phrases in place of another. First example is, there are over 2,000 vagrants in the city. So a vagrant is someone who is a public nuisance, and you can tell by the word that they chose, vagrant, it is probably someone that is writing an article or an editorial in support of getting rid of the vagrants in the city. If the article was replaced with this phrase, there are over 2,000 people with no fixed address in the city, this avoids both a negative and a positive connotation, unlike the last one, which was a negative connotation. This would be terminology that would maybe be used to not show a bias. And lastly, there are over 2,000 homeless in the city. A homeless person is a person worthy of pity and charity. So this person, you could assume, was writing an editorial to support shelters and would be using homeless to evoke a positive connotation from you, something that is deserves sympathy. So notice how all of these three different examples evoke a different tone just by changing out the words. Flip back to your application section, read the two passages, and determine which passage evokes a positive connotation and which passage evokes a negative connotation. Then highlight the words in each passage that influence the tone of the text. Here's the first one. Go ahead and pause and read it through and highlight the words that show a positive or negative connotation, and then underneath write whether it's positive or negative in general. And here is the second one. Go ahead and highlight in this one the words that show whether it's a positive or negative connotation and highlight them as well. So last, please take some time and review everything you've taken notes on today and write a 3-sentence summary at minimum about the learning target and what you learned about denotations and connotations and the influence on the reader.